Good morning, everyone. If you can't see me, it's because I'm over here in the corner. Andy's in my usual seat there. I'd like to call to order a joint meeting of the TransLink Board and the Mayor's Council on Regional Transportation. First item is the adoption of the agenda. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I want to start off by saying that we respect the Indigenous nations within Metro Vancouver and acknowledge all First Nations, Inuit, Métis people for their continued resilience, sustainable stewardship, and as active members of the community for generations to come, and recognize the important role that we all have to play in supporting reconciliation with Indigenous people. Next item is public delegations, and there are none. So we will move to Jennifer Breeze, who's going to provide a brief overview of the approved process for joint meetings as a refresher.
There we go. Thank you. Since it has been some time since the two bodies came together for a joint meeting, we just wanted to take a moment to refresh on some of the joint meeting procedures for the board and the Mayor's Council today. As Mayor West noted, for the conduct of the meeting, there's two co-chairs for the meeting, and they will rotate back and forth as the agenda sort of requires as we go through. For formal purposes, this is actually two separate meetings of the bodies, but they're meeting together today. So we have separate minutes. There will be separate resolutions that are called by each of the chairs, and the meetings are minuted separately as well. Excuse me. Under the TransLink legislation, with respect to the investment plan, the two bodies actually also have separate responsibilities, slightly different responsibilities, and you'll see that reflected in the resolutions on the table today. The board is responsible to review and approve the investment plan and provide it to the Mayor's Council, and then the Mayor's Council may approve the investment plan. And so you'll see that the resolutions are a little bit different to reflect those responsibilities. So again, the motions will be called separately, polled separately, and I think that's all that I have. So before we move on to the next report, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none. Just before we move to the investment plan, just a note that we do have stacked meetings here, and I know that a number of mayors have mentioned to me that they're under some time constraints. So I'll respectfully ask for staff and members to be concise with their presentations and comments. So now I'll invite Kevin Quinn and team up to walk us through the 2024 investment plan.
All right. Good morning. Wonderful to see you all joint meeting of the mayors and the board today. And thanks so much for having us. Before we get started, I would like to just take a quick moment to welcome Mayors Buchanan and Woodward as the new Mayor's Council designates to the TransLink board. And so I look forward to continuing to work with you both in this new capacity. Let's go. As you're all aware, our region is facing significant pressures. Metro Vancouver is seeing unprecedented rates of growth with new residents coming to the region every day. And in 2023 alone, we know that we welcomed 90,000 new residents to the region. That's nearly double what we planned for. And plus, more than half of these newcomers are choosing transit as their primary mode of commuting. There are 900,000 people taking transit every week in this region. And as our population grows, ridership is only continuing to grow as well. But at peak times, 1/3 of trips in Surrey, Langley, and Vancouver are overcrowded. And we only anticipate this getting worse without further investment. At the same time, we're increasingly experiencing the effects of the climate emergency. Congestion is worsening, and we are in an affordability crisis. We know that a robust transit system is foundational in responding to these pressures and tackling the challenges our region is facing. But the reality is that the rate of growth has outpaced our local ability to pay for it. TransLink is facing an extremely problematic structural deficit caused by lower fare revenue than previously projected due to the after effects of the pandemic, declining fuel tax as we electrify our vehicles, and increased costs due to inflation. And to be frank, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. By the end of next year, we hit a fiscal cliff. And the stark reality is that without additional funding, we won't have enough revenues to cover the costs of keeping the current system running, let alone funding much needed expansion that we know this region needs. What does this look like? Well, it looks like cuts. It looks like cuts to service, to programs, and to staffing. In January of this year, due to the CNBC job action, we saw firsthand the critical dependency that our region and economy has on our transit system. And you may recall that for 48 hours, vital workers like daycare providers, nurses, and teachers could not get to work. Commuters experienced extreme delays in congestion as people resorted to getting back in their cars. The reality is that this fiscal crisis isn't just TransLink's burden. It poses a threat capable of bringing our region to a standstill. And this is something that none of us want to see. We're all doing all we can to avoid hitting this cliff, including continuing to work with the Mayor's Council and the province of BC and the Government of Canada to develop a long-term funding solution for transit in the region. And TransLink is committed to being efficient as well, looking for cost-saving measures every place we can. That said, it's clear that we need to act now on these pressures with the limited resources we have to manage the issues customers are experiencing today as we develop long-term solutions for tomorrow. And this is our intention for the 2024 investment plan. The 2024 investment plan is a short-term measure that allows us to take some small but important steps towards addressing critical transit service needs and responding to our unprecedented growth. The plan is a stopgap to bridge us to our next investment plan, anticipated for mid-2025, which will offer long-term solutions and begin to implement the first phase of Access for Everyone. We still have a lot of work ahead of us, and while I've spoken about the challenges ahead, I want to highlight the huge opportunity ahead of us. Growth is critical to the vibrancy and success of our economy, and we are lucky to live and work in a region that is passionate about transit and choosing sustainable modes of commuting. And as more and more people move to this region, we know we must provide reliable service to ensure no one is left behind. Every seat on the bus, every service hour on the train, and every new transit route is a connection to opportunity. The 2024 investment plan will start to move the needle back in the right direction and set us up to ultimately deliver the transit service this region needs as outlined in the Access for Everyone plan. I'm confident in our path forward and look forward to continuing to work with this board and Mayor's Council as we realize our vision for the future of transportation in this region. I'd like to now introduce Sarah Ross, TransLink's Vice President for Transportation Planning and Policy, who will walk through the details of the 2024 investment plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, and good morning. As Kevin said, this is a short-term measure that includes some important increases to services that will address the critical transit service needs that we have on the ground today, beginning in September. Bus service will increase 3% to begin to address overcrowding and provide some additional off-peak service in key areas of the region. And this is the region's first broad-based service improvement since before the pandemic. For rail, we're increasing peak frequencies on the Canada Line, adding more cars to the West Coast Express, and increasing service on the Expo and Millennium lines. Earlier C-Bus service will support workers that travel to and from the North Shore, and late evening Handy Dart service will improve accessibility for those who cannot use the conventional system. This plan also funds foundational investments in bus fleet and facilities, thanks to the support of the BC government that will prepare us to deliver the Access for Everyone plan as soon as possible, including bus rapid transit and electrification commitments. And finally, we're extending another year of funding to municipalities for walking, biking, and road safety improvements, as well as investing in our bus speed and reliability program for one more year to address bus delays on key corridors. To fund these investments, we're limited to the mechanisms allowed under provincial legislation, which are currently fare revenues and property taxes. This July, transit fares will increase an average of 2.3% or by 5 to 10 cents for an average trip, as outlined in our 2022 investment plan and approved by the TransLink board in March. And this plan also includes an additional 10-cent increase to the cash fare in 2025. Since 2020, fare increases have been kept much lower than previously planned, as well as lower than the rate of inflation. And that remains true with this increase. Property taxes in 2024 will increase an additional about $3 per month for a median property. This amounts to about a 1% increase on someone's total property tax bill. Helping to deliver the 2024 investment plan is we'll be applying the remaining operational funds from the relief funding provided by the Government of BC in March of 2023, as well as $300 million in an infrastructure contribution from the province that will be directed towards bus fleet and facilities to get ready for that future service expansion as outlined in the Access for Everyone plan. There is no new federal capital funding in this plan. We will need to wait for the Permanent Transit Fund program to be officially launched and open to applications hopefully later this year. From March 22nd to April 5th, we undertook public consultation and we receive feedback. This is to facilitate understanding of the proposed investments and our fiscal realities. We prepared a fulsome discussion guide, which was available, with a summary of which was available also in English, as well as traditional Chinese, simplified Chinese and Punjabi to help reach non-English speaking members of our community. And in addition to feedback form on the website, we had a dedicated email inbox as well as a voicemail inbox to receive public input. We issued media release, reached out to local elected officials and key stakeholders, such as members of our Access Transit Users Advisory Committees. During the 2-week public engagement period, we had approximately 4,000 page views on our TransLink Listens project page. We received 165 individual feedback responses. Themes that emerged included very bus route specific suggestions, as well as taxation and funding source related suggestions, comments about transit fare levels, and suggestions about overall bus service levels. Most of the comments, 64%, had a neutral sentiment, 22% were positive, 14% carried a negative tone. As Kevin noted at the outset, this is a stopgap measure to help us get to the next investment plan anticipated for 2025, which needs to see long-term solutions for this region. It's critical that we continue to work closely with the TransLink Board, the Mayor's Council, the governments of British Columbia and Canada to return TransLink to long-term financial sustainability so that we're able to continue to provide the critical transportation services that our growing region needs to function. And we look forward to working with you on this over the next year. We appreciate your time. We are happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any questions of staff at this time? All right, seeing none, I'll turn the chair over to Andy Ross for the board's consideration of the motions.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate that. We do have the motion for the board coming up first. And I'd just like to acknowledge the work of staff, great work done by the Mayor's Council and the contributions from the province that enabled us to be in this position to stopgap our fiscal cliff. So you help me through this. I believe the motions are going to be on the screens. Is that correct? Okay, just came up. So you see the motion in front of you. I would ask for somebody to make that motion. It's been moved, seconded. Seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Whew, exhausted. Back to you, Brad.
You set a high bar, Andy. I'll see if I can manage the same here. All right, before I call for a mover and seconder on the Mayor's Council motions, I just wanted to open up for any further discussion from the floor. The one, I'll just make a very brief comment because I know members of the Mayor's Council, we've obviously discussed this at length. I'm supportive, obviously. I think this is an important step, but by no means is it the final step. We have a lot of work to do. I appreciate the efforts of everyone to get us to this point, and there was no guarantee that we were going to get to this point. In fact, at different parts of this journey, it felt like maybe we were going to be unsuccessful. But I want to really acknowledge the efforts of my colleagues on the Mayor's Council who lobbied the province intensely to come to the table and to provide some funding so that we could all collectively move forward and that the Mayor's Council and the board could also approve funding to be able to begin to address some of the challenges. And I say begin because that's really all this does. As we noted at the press conference last week with Minister Fleming, as much as we congratulate and appreciate the province for stepping up, we noted the absence of a very important player in all of this, the federal government. And they delivered a budget the day before that announcement that contained nothing. And that is simply not good enough for this region, particularly when so many of the decisions that are made in Ottawa are having a significant impact on our transit system. So I know the mayors will continue to lobby as hard as we can to bring Ottawa to the table and to have them step up and meet their responsibilities to the people of Metro Vancouver. And I know that we're going to work very, very closely with the province over the next year to deliver an investment plan and an investment plan in a year where the stakes will be very high, as Mr. Quinn noted. In that regard, one request of staff, I think it would be very important for members of the Mayor's Council, but even more important for members of the public to understand what the failure to achieve an investment plan next year would mean to transit service. You've talked about a significant reduction in service and cuts. I think we need to begin to provide greater detail of what that would look like, so members of the public in particular can really get their head wrapped around about the impact to their daily life and to this region if we're unable to see an investment plan next year. And in that regard, I will say I know the Mayor's Council is ready, willing, able, and eager to achieve an investment plan next year. And I hope that the provincial government, whoever that provincial government is, will be a partner in that and will also be ready and able, willing, eager to step up and deliver for people in this region. So with that, if there's no further comments, I'll ask for a mover and seconder of a motion that will see. Our group, we don't even wait for it to come up on the screen. That's how good we are. There it is, moved and seconded. Any comments, questions? Vice Chair Hurley, did you want to say anything to end us off?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to your comments about the absence of federal efforts to ensure that we can have a real improvement in our transit service. You know, every time they make announcements, transit is always part of somewhere in the announcement, kind of like housing, I guess. But billions of dollars are always spoken about. But when we go to ask to get those dollars, we're always told it's oversubscribed or some other such excuse. So it's going to be very difficult to get to a real plan without a real investment from the federal government, who say they believe in transit and who say that they want to start solving climate change issues and they want to bring in more and more people into our country without investing real dollars in what's needed to ensure that happens in the right kind of way. So once again, I will speak out to the minister responsible and say, you have to come to the table. You can't just lower all these problems down to municipalities, which is what keeps happening for everything we're seeing now. Everything is getting downloaded to municipalities. that we must find the answer. Well, I'm sorry, you're getting 70% of the taxation for this country, and it's time for you to step up and do your part. So I'm calling today on the federal government to do as we have asked them to do over and over again, and that's to come to the table with funding, permanent funding for transit, so that we can really start planning this region the way we need to. And, you know, it's time to stop the, you know, making announcements. And it's time to come forward and provide some real money, real dollars, so that we can get on with building a transit system that works for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Hurley. All right, motion's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, I'll turn the chair back over to Andy Ross.
I'm new at this. Okay, so we move to the next set of resolutions for the board right now. And I just want to reiterate some of the words that Mayor West and Mayor Hurley said, that this is just a stopgap. We are in just 1 year. And we talk about the importance of transit, but also the economic impact, the effect on housing, the effect on jobs, the effect of daily life of everything is vital to this. I think it's critical, and we fully support the Mayor's advocacy and looking at senior levels of government to provide a permanent mechanism for us to provide the transportation, which is a necessary part of life for everyone in Metro Vancouver. So thanks for the work on this. So we have the resolutions in front of you. I'd entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not following my instructions. I would ask Olga to present prior to accepting the resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief with my remarks. In front of you, you have two bylaws. These bylaws for the property tax are consistent with the 2024 investment plan. The total property and replacement tax revenue for 2024 is $594.1 million in accordance with these bylaws, and it consists of 4.15 increase to annual statutory property tax, 3.18% increase to the development growth, and one-time increase of $80 million approved in the 2024 investment plan. This one-time increase in property tax is very much needed to pay for much-needed service expansion. Replacement tax revenue remains flat at $18 million, fixed annual amount. There are two bylaws in this package because the property tax and replacement tax are administered separately. With that, I will turn back to Chair for questions.
Thank you, Olga. Are there any questions? Most of the board have seen this as it's already gone through our committee and been reviewed. I'm seeing none, therefore I will ask for a mover. Moved, seconded, thank you. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously. In the second motion, I look for a mover on that. Moved and seconded, discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And I believe that concludes the joint portion of this meeting, although I note the Mayor's Council will be remaining here. So thank you all. Thank you for your attendance and good luck in your meeting, Mayors.
Thank you.